Good evening. According to local reports, the mayor pro temp of a city out in Northern California, he has just resigned after pleading guilty to election fraud. Meanwhile, over in Illinois, 5 people have been charged with various election fraud-related cases that stem from the November 3rd election, including charges of forgery, perjury, as well as attempting to cast ballots for someone else. Now, over at the Supreme Court, 2 days ago, they decided to dismiss President Trump's final remaining challenge to the 2020 election, which was a lawsuit challenging the results out in Wisconsin, which means, essentially, ultimately, that they decided to not hear any election-related cases. And lastly, over in Georgia, the state Senate over there has just passed a comprehensive election reform bill that would, among other things, repeal no-excuse absentee voting, as well as limit mail-in voting to certain very narrow criteria. Let's go through these stories together. This is your daily Facts Matter update, and I'm your host, Roman from the Epoch Times. Now let's start today's discussion by talking about the Supreme Court. 2 days ago, the Supreme Court dismissed President Trump's final remaining challenge to the 2020 election results, which was actually a lawsuit challenging the results out in Wisconsin. In this final case, which was titled Trump versus Wisconsin Elections Commission, President Trump's team argued that the Wisconsin Commission, they violated the U.S. Constitution when they established rules for mail-in voting without the consent of the state legislature. According to the lawsuit, the Wisconsin Commission, as well as local election officials, implemented unauthorized illegal absentee voting drop boxes, compelled illegal corrections to absentee ballot witness certificates by poll workers, and encouraged widespread voter misuse of indefinitely confined status to avoid voter ID laws, all in disregard of the legislature's explicit command to carefully regulate the absentee voting process. Now, back in December 24th of last year, the U.S. Court of Appeals for the 7th Circuit actually ruled against President Trump in this case. And then right afterwards, President Trump's team appealed the decision over to the Supreme Court, and they have been waiting until now to hear back from them. And as of 2 days ago, the case has been officially dismissed. Now, as is customary for the Supreme Court when they refuse to hear petitions, they did not explain their rationale. Also, it's worth noting that none of the justices indicated that they were dissenting from the court's decision. And also, this dismissal came on the heels of other legal challenges that were thrown out by the Supreme Court a few weeks back. And now, with no more cases making their way up to the appeals circuit, we can definitively say that the Supreme Court has declined to hear any cases related to the 2020 presidential election. Now, if you would like to read more about this case that was dismissed out in Wisconsin, we put together a briefer on all of the points that are presented in a comprehensive overview article. The link to it will be in the description box below this video for you to check out. And by the way, while you're down there looking for that link, take a quick moment to smash that like button, because you already know that videos that are like this, talking honestly about what is happening in this world, about the important things happening in this world and this country, are routinely censored, throttled, meaning that their reach is reduced by big tech algorithms like YouTube, or they're outright removed. Sometimes I'm sure you go back to watch one of our videos and you find that it might be missing. However, when you smash that like button that's below this video, you are forcing the YouTube algorithm to share this video out to potentially thousands of more people, letting the truth be known far and wide. And now let's go on over to California. According to local reports, out in Crescent City, which is a city in Northern California, almost touching Oregon, the mayor pro tempore over there has just resigned after he pled guilty to election fraud. Now, the mayor pro tem is a man by the name of Alex Campbell, and he has just entered a guilty plea of making a false declaration of candidacy. Now, what does that actually mean? Well, Mr. Campbell submitted a form to the county clerk back in August of last year saying that his current address was in Crescent City when his actual residence was outside of the city limits. Basically, he was saying that he lived in the city when he allegedly did not. Now, Mr. Campbell wound up actually being elected to the city council on November 3rd before he eventually became the mayor pro temp in December. However, the local district attorney over there decided to dismiss the perjury charges and only decided to try him on one false count of falsely declaring his candidacy. According to the local reports, he faces 2 years of felony probation, fines of up to $20,000, as well as restitution of up to $10,000 to the city if he's ultimately tried and found guilty. Now, if you'd like to read more about this case out in Crescent City, that link will be in the description box below this video for you to check out. And now, before we talk about the 5 people who were charged with election fraud out in Illinois, I would like to take a quick second to introduce our sponsor for today's episode, which I will do from the sound booth. The sponsor for today's episode is AMAC, which stands for the Association of Mature American Citizens. Now, I do consider myself a mature American citizen. However, I'm about 20 years too young to join AMAC. However, if you or somebody else in your family is 50 years old or over, I would consider joining them because there are three main benefits to joining AMAC. The first one is the money saving benefit. Basically, if you're a member, they give you a ton of perks to restaurants from across the country, to retail shops, on insurance plans, on vitamins. It's a pretty long list. Actually, it'll be in the link in the description box below this video. You can check out the full list. It's pretty long. The second benefit is that they have an awesome magazine that they send to your door. And even though I'm not a member, I have read their magazine, and it's really good. It's filled with a lot of thought-provoking articles. And then the third benefit, which a lot of people cite as their favorite benefit, is that they actually fight for conservative values on Capitol Hill. Basically, they're fighting against what they're calling a socialist storm that is brewing in America. I mean, they're basically the conservative alternative to the AARP, and you should consider joining. I mean, it's only about $16 every year, but you get a ton of benefits. So you can click on the link in the description box below this video, or you can go to amac.us/facts matter. Again, that's amac.us/facts matter and check them out. AMAC, thank you so much for sponsoring this episode. And now, Roman in the studio, back to you. And now let's go on over to Illinois. According to the state attorney's office, 5 people have been charged with voter fraud that's related to their actions during the November 3rd election of last year. According to a news release that came out of the state attorney's office, these charges stem from investigations that were conducted into 32 cases of alleged election fraud over in Illinois. Now, while the office did not provide too many specific details about these charges, from what we do know from the publicly available records, they include forgery, perjury, as well as attempting to cast a ballot for somebody else. In the news release, here's what the state's attorney general said. The very foundation of our country is built upon fair and free elections. Elections are a sacred duty, and while the 5 defendants charged today represent an infinitesimal percentage of the over 491,000 votes cast in the 2020 general election, it is important that anyone suspected of attempting to interfere in any way in the election process be investigated and charged where appropriate. Now, according to local reports out in Illinois, yesterday a judge signed arrest warrants for these 5 suspects, and each person's bail was set for $1,000. Now, if you would like to read the full statement or to see the names of the people who have been charged out in Illinois, that link will be in the description box below this video for you to check out. And now let's head on over to Georgia. 2 days ago, the Georgia State Senate passed a comprehensive election reform bill that would, among other things, repeal no-excuse absentee voting and limit mail-in voting to certain very narrow criteria. Which criteria? Well, under this new proposed law, those who are eligible to vote by mail will be limited to people who are only one of few things: are physically disabled, over the age of 65, who are military or overseas voters, someone who has a religious holiday around Election Day, someone who works in the election process themselves, or someone who is unavoidably needing to be outside of the state, outside of their voting precinct during either the early voting period or on Election Day itself. Anyone not covered by those 6 points cannot vote by mail. However, those 6 points do cover a lot of scenarios, and according to the main sponsor of the bill, an estimated 2.7 million Georgians would still be eligible to vote by mail under this criteria. And furthermore, the bill would actually require voter ID in order to request an absentee ballot, something I'm actually surprised doesn't already exist. In a statement released by the Georgia Senate Republican Caucus, they said, "We've spent several hundred hours doing research and policy development around election integrity, addressing the lack of faith and integrity in our current election systems as expressed by many of our citizens. We encourage all citizens to practice their civic duty, and in return, it is our responsibility to ensure public confidence and trust in the system, ensuring our rights are protected. SB 241, which is the generic name for this bill, codifies open and honest reformation to a multitude of areas regarding election oversight, voting processes, and transparency." Now, this bill has already passed the Senate, and currently it's making its way to the Georgia House, where it's expected to be passed in the next several weeks. And actually, the bill must pass before March 31st in order to have a chance of becoming law by the end of the 2021 legislative session, although that is still subject to whether Brian Kemp, who is the governor of Georgia, decides to sign the bill or to veto it. And also, just for your reference, Since the last election, across all 50 states, there have been over 1,600 election-related bills introduced by lawmakers. Out of those 1,600 proposed bills, only about 200 of them have made it out of a committee so far, and out of those 200, only a handful have actually been enacted. But none of the ones that have been enacted have been in battleground states which were contested during the November election. So that's why this bill, the one out in Georgia, is fairly significant, as it might also pave the way for other battleground states like Arizona, Pennsylvania, and Wisconsin. If you'd like to dig a little bit deeper into the provisions inside of this proposed law over in Georgia, that link will be in the description box below this video for you to check out. And actually, while we are on the topic of Georgia, I'd like to mention another story that's related to the Second Amendment that happened over in Atlanta. 2 days ago, a person armed with a gun stopped an attempted robbery of a Chick-fil-A restaurant. Now, we here at the Epoch Times, we actually asked the Atlanta Police Department about what happened there, and here's what they emailed back to us. Upon arrival, officers spoke with witnesses who stated a black male walked inside, produced a firearm, and demanded money from several employees. The employees fled, and the suspect exited the business a short time later. Several nearby citizens confronted the suspect as he was leaving. One of the citizens was armed, and at some point during the confrontation, the citizen fired several shots. The suspect ran on foot and was apprehended nearby by the citizens and held until police arrived. The report then went on to say that luckily no one was injured from the gunfire. The suspect in this case has been charged with armed robbery, aggravated assault, as well as possession of a firearm during the commission of a felony. He is currently being held over in Fulton County Jail. Now, there aren't too many other further known details in this case, but if you'd like to read about any of the few specifics that we do know, that link will be in the description box below this video for you to check out. And now let's talk about abortion. There is a group in this country called Pro-Life Evangelicals for Joe Biden. And during the presidential campaign of 2020, this group said that in order to obtain their support, the Biden team told them that once they got into office, there would be dialogue with this group as well as the Biden administration. However, apparently that has not happened, and this evangelical organization has now issued a letter describing how they feel both used and betrayed. Specifically, they feel embittered about the fact that the Hyde Amendment was excluded from the Democrats' $1.9 trillion relief package. And for your reference, by the way, the Hyde Amendment is a piece of legislation that prevents federal funds from being used to perform almost all types of abortions. Now, here's what this group said in their letter. We are very disappointed about the COVID-19 relief package's exclusion of the Hyde Amendment, a long-standing bipartisan policy that prevents taxpayer funding for abortion. We're even more upset that the Biden administration is supporting this bill. As pro-life leaders in the evangelical community, we publicly supported President Biden's candidacy with the understanding that there would be engagement with us on the issue of abortion, and particularly the Hyde Amendment. Now, they went on further in that letter to say that they feel both used and betrayed because in order to obtain their support, they were told that there would be dialogue with them. But they said that has not occurred so far. The Biden team wanted to talk to us during the campaign to gain our support, and we gave it on the condition there would be active dialogue and common ground solutions on the issue of abortion. There has been no dialogue since the campaign. Now, what's interesting to note here is that Joe Biden, for decades, has supported the Hyde Amendment, but he reversed his stance back in 2019, so 2 years ago, when he told the crowd this. If I believe health care is a right, as I do, I can no longer support an amendment that makes that right dependent on someone's zip code. Now, this is not the first case of strong criticism against the Biden administration from a large Christian group. In fact, last month, the president of a Catholic civil rights organization released a scathing rebuke of the Equality Act, which was introduced by the Democrats, saying that it promotes the most comprehensive assault on Christianity ever written into law. Healthcare providers would be forced to provide hormone therapies and surgical procedures that are required to change the physical characteristics associated with sex changes. And furthermore, outside of that rebuke, the Kansas City Archbishop recently said in an interview that Joe Biden should just come out and acknowledge that his support for abortion contradicts his professed Catholic faith. Here's what he said. The president should stop defining himself as a devout Catholic and acknowledge that his view on abortion is contrary to the Catholic moral teaching. It would be a more honest approach from him to say he disagreed with his church on this important issue and that he was acting contrary to church teaching. Now, we here at the Epoch Times, we reached out to the White House for comment on this matter, but we have yet to hear back. However, if you would like to read any of the rebukes mentioned above, including the full statement, the full letter from that pro-life organization, all those links will be in the description box below this video for you to check out. And now let's talk about Nevada. The entire staff, literally all the staff members of the Nevada Democrat Party, they quit their positions after socialist candidates took over the executive leadership. Specifically, what happened is that members of the Democrat Socialists of America took over all of the leadership positions within Nevada's Democrat Party, including the executive chair, the first vice chair, the second vice chair, secretary, as well as treasurer. And right afterwards, Alana Mounts, who is the Nevada Democrat Party's executive director, she sent an email announcing that she would be leaving her position and that every employee, as well as every consultant, would also be quitting and taking their severance packages with them. Now, according to Trevor Loudon, who is an expert on socialist subversion here in America, the reason that this is so significant is twofold. Firstly, despite its claims to the contrary, the Democratic Socialists of America is a communist organization, according to Loudon. They are formally aligned with the Communist Party USA, as well as several other organizations, which work closely with the Chinese Communist Party against the interests of the United States. And secondly, this takeover of the Nevada Democratic Party would give the Democratic Socialists of America, which is essentially the country's largest Marxist party, it will give them access to key Democratic Party decision makers, it will give them access to sensitive party documents, and it will give them access to key donor lists. Now, we here at the Epoch Times, we reached out to the Nevada Democratic Party for comment on this issue, but we have yet to hear back. Now, if you would like to read more about what's happening over at the party in Nevada, or about the Democratic Socialists of America, if you'd like to know more about them, about what they stand for, and their ties to different Marxist organizations, all those links will be in the description box below this video for you to check out. And now lastly, as we already mentioned in previous episodes, on the very same day that Joe Biden was sworn into office, YouTube made the unilateral decision to demonetize our program, to demonetize Facts Matter. We can now no longer run any ads before, during, or after our program, and the Super Chat feature has just been disabled. I mean, of course, luckily we have sponsors, typically companies run by patriots who support our work. However, when a platform like YouTube essentially cuts off our ability to do any kind of pre-roll or mid-roll advertising, what they're doing is essentially snuffing out our journalism. They're snuffing out our independent journalism. However, if you would like to support us, I will throw a link into the description box below this video to a page where you can subscribe to the Epoch Times. It doesn't cost much, it's just a few dollars every month. However, by subscribing, you will have unfettered access to our independent journalism, all of our deep reporting, our investigations, our video interviews, our documentaries, our opinion pieces, and everything else, including if anything ever happens here on YouTube, you will have continued access to Facts Matter, Crossroads, American Thought Leaders, and all of our other video programs. Again, that link will be in the description box below this video. I hope you check it out, and I hope you subscribe. Now, if you haven't already, smash that like button for the YouTube algorithm, subscribe to this YouTube channel in order to get honest news coverage directly into your YouTube feed while you still can. And until next time, I'm your host, Roman from the Epoch Times. Stay informed and stay free.